Welcome back to another week of furniture refinishing. This week I wanted to challenge myself in a slightly different direction. I grabbed this pair of nightstands for $10 at my local thrift store. It's very rare to find a set of nightstands, and it's even more rare to find them in good condition. I found a pair, but they're not in good condition. Come along with me this week as I take these rather rough, pretty beat up, and very dirty, messy nightstands and transform them into something that is useful, desirable, and will function beautifully for a new owner. Follow along to see what we can achieve. Now, these are a more modern example of furniture that you would be able to find rather affordably in stores today. They've been well loved, well used. The top of one of them is very, very scratched up. And you can tell that a good portion of these nightstands are actually made with a combination of press board and particle board. There are definitely some solid wood elements. They're just pretty minor in this set. However, the drawers are functioning pretty well. They're nice, big, deep drawers on the bottom. They offer plenty of storage, and my goal for this week was to take an example of a piece of furniture that was probably destined for the landfill, thought to be done with its useful life, and turn it around and make it into something that can be useful again, and not only useful, but stay out of the landfill. You can see where the top is swelling a little bit in certain areas. I find that with these compressed board tops, they tend to be weakest around either an area where the finish has been gouged, or in a situation like these, around any sort of manufactured cracks, seams, anything like that. Those are natural weak points that will allow water to seep into the substrate if it sits on there for any amount of time, and I assume that's what happened with these. It's definitely fixable. I can still sand it down, even it out, and paint these. Not only will the paint provide a new surface, it will add extra protection. I do plan on using an extremely durable paint brand that I've used once before and really enjoyed. But before I can get to doing any of that, I'm going to take the pieces apart and clean them very, very thoroughly. I want to get rid of all of the dirt, all of the grime, any oils, polishes, just make sure everything is clean. And while I'm doing this, it gives me a great chance to go through and look very closely at the different components and make sure that everything is in good working order. And if there are any repairs that need to be made, I'll make them at this point. These pieces really truly are pretty filthy, and they do need a really good, decent cleaning. It's a bit of a balancing act. Because these are made with a material that reacts poorly with water and moisture, I do want to be pretty careful while cleaning these. I'm going to make sure that I wring my wet rag out very, very well so that it's almost dry when I'm wiping back this TSP alternative. The last thing I want to do is add to any problems that it might have with swelling or compromised areas while still providing a very thorough cleaning. I do plan on switching out the hardware for something a little bit more modern, a different color. So I'm going to remove these. I will probably just toss them. And my plan is to fill in the old hardware holes. These top two drawers are lined in a velvet, a fake velvet material. It's a great concept and a great idea, but I find that they get really messy, and then there's no really great way of cleaning them. So I am going to remove this. Sometimes they soak off with water pretty easily, but I can tell that the bottoms of these drawers are actually not like a solid plywood. So I don't want to cause them to swell or just lose any of their integrity. So I am going to try to remove most of this with just taking it off. If I need to sand it a bit, I can, and that will help me remove some of the rest of the residue. There's quite a bit of filling and repairs that I want to do on these two nightstands. I'm going to use a Bondo filler. This just provides a really hard and durable repair. It does dry very quickly, so I'm going to work fast. After mixing the two parts together, I will fill in all the areas that I want filled in. I am going to start with the tops. I want to fill in all of these lines right here because that's where future swelling or damage might occur in these weak points right here. These separations that they did that are purely aesthetic, there's no actual function to them. It'll just create a more flawless finish at the end. Once I got these pieces flipped on their side and was able to take a look at the bottom, I noticed that they're missing any sort of protective nylon feet, anything like that, and that's why there's so much damage on the edges. It's pretty typical to see this when there's no sort of protection. Naturally, pieces like this get dragged across the floor, might catch up on something, and just that little bit of lip really helps to minimize any sort of gouging or dings on the edges. With a 120 grit piece of sandpaper on my orbital sander, I can start to go over all of the surfaces of these nightstands, focusing a lot on the areas with the Bondo filler on it, as well as the areas of the tops that have swelled up. My goal here is to get everything nice and smooth and flat, not to take 100% of the finish off. I want to roughen it up, get rid of any minor scratches that might be in the surface, and clean things up to prep for primer and paint. All that sanding created quite a bit of dust, as it usually does, and I want to go ahead and wipe it back. However, I'm going to do it with a dry cloth and not a wet one because there is so much exposed material. Next comes my lightweight filler. I'm going to use this filler in all of the small surface level scratches. I know that this probably won't be the last time that I'm going to have to fill, but it gives me a good opportunity to go over everything with a little bit of filler in order to try to get the majority of the areas as smooth as possible, and I'll go back and revisit after primer. Again, everything got dusty, so I'm going to blow off all of the loose dust, try to get them as clean as possible in order to prep for primer. With everything all dusted off, it's time to prime. I am going to use my Bin Shellac primer. This primer is excellent for porous surfaces and surfaces that are sensitive to water. It is going to seal everything so that it's much, much, much more water resistant, and I won't have to worry so much going forward about any more water swelling, damage, any of that sort of thing. It would have to really sit and be very, very wet for a while in order for this to fail or get wet from both sides. I do choose to spray this product. Spray at your own risk. It's definitely a tougher cleanup product, but it does spray beautifully. You can get it in a spray can, which is very convenient, but it's just a lot more costly doing it that way. After giving this primer plenty of time to dry, I did go ahead and do one more coat of light filler on the top, especially on this particular nightstand that had all of those scratches. I just really want to have a nice and even finish when I go to paint these pieces. And a lot of times that primer really does highlight the other little dings and imperfections that might have been harder to see on the original wood finish. I picked up the color Forever Green in the Sherwin-Williams Gallery series. This is in a satin sheen, and I'm going to spray it through my sprayer. This particular type of paint, the Gallery series, is best sprayed, not brushed or rolled, just as an FYI. But it's very durable, sprays beautifully, and I really like this color. It's almost a light blue green, almost like a sea moss color. It's really pretty. And I will probably ever so slightly water down this paint a little bit just to loosen it up. It definitely sprays the best through my particular sprayer when it's a little bit looser. Now that all the dusty, dirty steps are done and out of the way, I'm gonna go ahead and really thoroughly clean all of these drawer boxes, starting with vacuuming. Then I will go in with a cleaner and I will clean all of the areas of the drawer boxes from the inside to the outside, making sure everything is nice and clean. If there are any sort of stains or anything like that, at this point I will try to buff them out using either sanding paper, soap and water, whatever it might take. I did order in some hardware that I think will play off of these pieces nicely. Just some simple knobs and some pulls for the bottom larger drawers. I do find for large drawers, not only do they balance well if it's an actual pull and not knobs, but it also gives you something a little bit more substantial to grab onto to help pull the drawer out. And lastly, I am gonna line these drawers. I wanna have a nice pop of pattern. And I have this leftover liner that actually matches this color really, really well. It's almost like they were meant for each other. When it came to drilling the holes for the hardware, I did want to make sure to get my measurements all accurate. So I put down a piece of masking tape and mapped out the center of the drawer faces where I wanted to install the hardware. After getting that done, I drew a line across the center and was able to use my hardware guide set to the measurements that I need to just make little pilot holes so that I could go in and finish drilling out the holes for the hardware in the exact perfect location that I needed them to be. With the last of the hardware installed, I do want to go ahead and wax the wooden drawer glides on these pieces. This is such a simple yet effective step at making the drawers slide so nicely. And with that drawer going home, let's take a look back at what we started with. These little nightstands were pretty rough when I got them. They were very, very dirty. There's a lot of grime on them, splatter of who knows what. That swollen top I knew would be a problem if it was not fixed and treated properly. And I wanted to show that something that was probably looked over and a lot of people would have just tossed in the trash actually had a lot more useful life. And here they are now. What a night and day transformation. The dark, dingy, dated, pretty scratched little set of nightstands is completely fresh and reimagined. I love this color. It's really pretty and subtle while still adding a little bit of color to somebody's room. They were not constructed with, say, solid wood components or a fancy wood veneer. They're still worth something and they're still very useful and functional and had plenty of life left. My plan is actually to donate these back to my community. There's a couple of local thrift stores that I do source from, and they do really, really wonderful work in the community. And as a little bit of a thank you, I want to give these back and give them a new life in somebody else's home that might have a lot of need for them. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for following along. please feel free to check out any of my other videos. Thank you so much.